The rain was coming down in sheets as I pulled into the parking lot of Rosewood Memorial Chapel. Through my windshield I could see the black-clad figures hurrying toward the entrance, their umbrellas fighting against the wind. Dad would have laughed at the weather. He always said that if it was going to rain at his funeral, it should at least be dramatic about it. I sat in my car for a few extra minutes, gathering the courage to face what I knew would be a difficult day. Not because I was burying my father. We'd said our real goodbye 3 weeks ago in the ICU when he was still conscious enough to squeeze my hand. This would be difficult because I'd have to sit through 2 hours of my family's performance of grief while pretending I hadn't been the one holding everything together for the past 6 months. When I finally walked into the chapel, the first thing I noticed was how beautiful it looked. The funeral director had followed my instructions perfectly, white lilies everywhere, Dad's favorite jazz playlist playing softly in the background, and a photo display showcasing his life from childhood through his retirement party. It was exactly what he would have wanted, down to the specific brand of coffee being served in the reception area. My brother Marcus was standing near the front of the chapel, receiving condolences from a steady stream of visitors. He looked appropriately somber in his expensive black suit, playing the role of grieving eldest son with practiced precision. Our sister Jennifer was beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while directing people toward the guest book. I started walking toward them, intending to take my place with the family, when Marcus noticed me approaching. "You can't see in the family section," he whispered harshly, stepping into my path. I stopped short, confused. "What? You never contributed anything," he continued, his voice low but venomous. "The rest of us have been handling everything while you've been off doing whatever it is you do." People were starting to stare. I could feel the weight of their curious gazes as they wondered why the deceased's daughter was being turned away by her own brother. "Marcus, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time. Dad's gone and now we need to figure out how to move forward as a family. That means the people who actually stepped up get to make the decisions." Jennifer moved closer, her expression apologetic but not contradictory. "Anna, maybe it would be better if you sat toward the back today. Just to avoid any complications." Complications. As if my presence at my own father's funeral was somehow problematic. I stayed in the back row silently. I found an empty seat in the last row, next to an elderly woman I didn't recognize who smelled like lavender and gave me a sympathetic smile. From there, I watched my family perform their grief for the assembled crowd of Dad's friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Marcus delivered a eulogy about what a wonderful father Dad had been, how he taught them the value of hard work and family loyalty. Jennifer read a poem about eternal love and the bonds that death cannot break. Our cousin David shared a funny story about Dad's legendary barbecue skills and his insistence on wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," well into his 70s. They were good stories and they were true. Dad had been all of those things, a devoted father, a hard worker, a man who loved to cook for his family and tell terrible jokes that somehow always made us laugh anyway. What they didn't mention was who had been there during the long nights in the hospital. Who had researched experimental treatments and fought with insurance companies and held Dad's hand when the pain medication made him confused and scared. Who had arranged for the home hospice care and coordinated with the medical team and made sure he was never alone during those final weeks. But I stayed silent, letting them have their moment. After all, this was their show. I was just the daughter who never contributed anything. The service was beautiful. The music was perfect, the flowers were stunning, and the funeral director managed everything with seamless professionalism. Dad would have been pleased, I thought, watching as his casket was carried out by 6 pallbearers that Marcus had selected from among his golf buddies and former co-workers. After the service, the funeral director approached him. "Sir, your sister paid for everything including your father's $80,000 medical bills." I was gathering my purse and preparing to leave when I heard Marcus's raised voice from the front of the chapel. "What do you mean, payment arrangements?" Harold Morrison, the funeral director, looked uncomfortable as he consulted his clipboard. "Well, sir, as I explained when we first met, the total cost for today's service comes to $23,400. That includes the casket, the memorial service, the reception, the flowers, and the transportation. Right, and I told you we'd handle payment after the service." "Actually, sir, the bill has already been settled. Your sister took care of everything when she came in last week to finalize the arrangements." Marcus turned to look at Jennifer, confusion evident on his face. "Jen, did you?" "No, I thought you were handling the finances." "Your other sister." Harold clarified, gesturing toward where I was standing. Miss Anna Williams. She also wanted me to give you this envelope. I watched from my position near the back as Harold handed Marcus a thick manila envelope. My brother's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching alarm as he tore it open and began reading the documents inside. The first page was the receipt for the funeral expenses, $23,400, paid in full by Anna Williams. The second page was a copy of the invoice for Dad's final week in the private ICU room, $34,000, paid by Anna Williams. The third page was a summary of Dad's cancer treatment costs over the past 6 months, $80,000 in medical bills, all bearing the same payment notation. Marcus's face went white as he flipped through page after page of expenses I'd covered. The home modifications to accommodate Dad's wheelchair, the specialized medical equipment, the round-the-clock nursing care during his final weeks, the experimental treatment that insurance had refused to cover. Jennifer was reading over his shoulder, her own expression shifting from shock to something that might have been shame. She paid for all of this? Jennifer whispered. Harold nodded. Ms. Williams has been handling your father's medical expenses for quite some time. She's also the one who arranged for today's service. She came in personally to select the flowers, choose the music and coordinate with the catering staff. Marcus was still staring at the papers. But we never asked her to. According to my notes, she specifically requested that the family not be informed of the payment arrangements until after the service. She wanted to ensure that financial concerns didn't interfere with your ability to grieve. I decided this was my cue to leave. I'd stayed for the service, paid my respects, and now my work was done. I started walking toward the exit, hoping to avoid the confrontation that was clearly brewing. Anna. Wait. Marcus's voice stopped me just as I reached the chapel doors. I turned to see him jogging toward me, the envelope clutched in his hand. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Yes, we do. These bills. Anna, this is over $100,000. I'm aware of the amount. Where did you get this kind of money? It was a fair question, I supposed. To my family, I was still the little sister who'd moved away after college and worked some kind of computer job that they'd never bothered to understand. They knew I lived alone in a downtown condo and drove a modest car, but beyond that, they'd never shown much interest in the details of my life. I have a good job, Marcus. Nobody has that good of a job. Jennifer had joined us by then, along with several other family members who were clearly curious about the heated discussion happening in the chapel lobby. Anna, Jennifer said softly, we had no idea Dad's medical bills were so expensive. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? During one of your monthly phone calls where you complained about your own problems for 20 minutes and then hung up? Or maybe during one of your visits to see Dad, which happened? Oh, that's right, they didn't happen. That's not fair, Marcus protested. We have our own families to worry about. Our own responsibilities. So do I. But you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. I have a mortgage, Marcus. I also have a business to run, employees to manage, and clients who depend on me. But when Dad got sick, I made time. What kind of business? Jennifer asked. It was the first time in years that either of them had asked me a direct question about my work. I own a cybersecurity consulting firm. We work with mid-size companies to protect their data and networks from cyber attacks. Marcus blinked. You own it. I founded it 8 years ago. We have 47 employees and offices in 3 cities. But you never said. You never asked. The truth was, I tried to share my professional successes with them over the years. When I'd landed my first major client, when I'd hired my first employee, when we'd opened our second office, I'd called them with the news, excited to share my accomplishments with my family. But their responses had always been polite disinterest at best, subtle criticism at worst. That's nice, dear, had been Mom's standard response. But don't you think it's time to settle down and find a nice man? Marcus's reaction had typically been some variation of, computer stuff, huh? Well, I guess someone has to do it. After a while, I'd stopped trying to include them in my professional life. It was easier to let them think I had some mundane office job than to constantly defend my choices and explain why I'd chosen career success over traditional family milestones. Anna, Jennifer said, we owe you an apology. For what specifically? For not being there when Dad was sick. For not helping with the expenses. For not. She gestured helplessly. For not being better siblings. And for what I said earlier, Marcus added, though he looked like the words were physically painful. About you not contributing anything. Obviously that was completely wrong. Yes, it was. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, surrounded by the lingering smell of lilies and the quiet conversations of departing mourners. Can we start over? Jennifer asked finally. Start over how? I don't know. Maybe we could actually try to be a family. Actually talk to each other about our lives, support each other when things get difficult. Like we should have been doing all along, Marcus added. I looked at my brother and sister, really looked at them, for the first time in years. Marcus was 42 with gray creeping into his hair and worry lines around his eyes that suggested his successful law practice wasn't as stress-free as he liked to pretend. Jennifer was 38, still beautiful but with the exhausted expression of a woman juggling 2 young children and a demanding job as a marketing executive. They weren't bad people. They were just people who'd gotten so caught up in their own lives that they'd forgotten to pay attention to anyone else's. The thing is, I said carefully, starting over requires both parties to actually put in effort. It means asking how someone's doing and actually listening to the answer. It means showing up when things get difficult, not just when it's convenient. We understand, Jennifer said. Do you? Because 6 months ago when Dad was diagnosed, I called both of you to discuss treatment options and care arrangements. Marcus, you said you'd check your calendar and get back to me. You never did. Jennifer, you said you'd research hospice care options and then disappeared for 3 weeks. They both looked ashamed, which was appropriate. Anna, we're sorry, Marcus said. We thought you had everything under control. I did have everything under control. But that doesn't mean I didn't need support. You're right, Jennifer said. And we failed you. We failed Dad too. So what now? Marcus asked. How do we fix this? I thought about it for a moment. These were the people I'd grown up with, the ones who'd known me before I became successful, before I learned to be independent and self-sufficient. Despite everything, they were still my family. We start by being honest with each other, I said finally. About our lives, our struggles, our successes. We check in regularly, not just when someone dies or gets married or has a crisis. And we pay you back, Marcus added. For all of this. It might take time, but we'll figure out a payment plan. I don't want your money. But Anna, it's over $100,000. I know what it cost. And I chose to pay it because I wanted Dad to have the best possible care during his final months. That was my gift to him and my responsibility as his daughter. But we should have been sharing that responsibility, Jennifer protested. Yes, you should have. But you can't retroactively change the past 6 months. What you can do is be better going forward. What does that look like? Marcus asked. It looks like calling each other once a week just to check in. It looks like celebrating each other's successes instead of ignoring them. It looks like showing up when someone needs help, even if it's inconvenient. And it looks like actually getting to know each other as adults, Jennifer added. Because honestly, Anna, I had no idea you were running a successful business. I still think of you as my little sister who was good at math. I smiled at that. I am good at math. That's part of why the business works. Tell us about it, Marcus said. Really? I want to understand what you do. So I did. Standing there in the chapel lobby, surrounded by the lingering traces of Dad's memorial service, I told them about my company. About the clients we served and the problems we solved. About the satisfaction of building something from nothing, of creating jobs for talented people, of protecting businesses from threats they didn't even know existed. They listened, really listened, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in my work for the first time in years. I'm proud of you, Jennifer said when I finished. I should have been saying that all along. We both should have, Marcus agreed. And we should have been here to help with Dad. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. 6 months later, we were having our weekly family dinner at my condo. It had become a tradition. Every Sunday evening, the 3 of us would get together to cook, eat, and catch up on each other's lives. Tonight, Marcus was chopping vegetables for salad while telling us about a difficult case he was working on. Jennifer was stirring pasta sauce and sharing funny stories about her kids' latest adventures. And I was setting the table while updating them on a new contract my company had just landed with a major healthcare network. So the hospital system has been getting targeted by ransomware attacks, I was explaining, and they need us to completely overhaul their security infrastructure. How long will that take? Jennifer asked. About 6 months for the full implementation. But it's a great contract, not just financially but because healthcare security is so important. We're literally helping protect patient data and medical records. That's amazing, Marcus said. You're like a digital superhero. I laughed. I think that's overstating it a bit. Is it though? You're protecting people from cybercriminals. That seems pretty heroic to me. It was a far cry from the days when they dismissed my work as computer stuff. Now they understood not just what I did but why it mattered. Speaking of work, Jennifer said, I have news. Good news or bad news? I asked. Good news. I got the promotion. Marcus and I both cheered. Jennifer had been working toward a senior vice president position at her marketing firm for over a year, and we'd all been anxiously waiting to hear the results of her final interview. That's fantastic, I said. When do you start? Next month. And the best part is the new role has better work-life balance. More strategic planning, less crisis management. Perfect, Marcus said. You've been burning the candle at both ends for too long. Says the man who worked through his vacation last month. Jennifer teased. That was different. We were in the middle of depositions. There's always something, I pointed out. You have to make time for life outside of work. Listen to you, Marcus said. The woman who used to work 18-hour days lecturing me about work-life balance. I learned from experience. And I had good teachers. Who? Dad. During those last few weeks he kept telling me that the most important thing wasn't how successful my business was, but whether I was building relationships that would last beyond my career. We were quiet for a moment, remembering. He was right, Jennifer said softly. Success doesn't mean much if you don't have people to share it with. Which is why these dinners are so important, I said. Whatever else is happening in our lives, we show up for each other. Every week, Marcus agreed. No matter what. Even when I'm traveling for work? Jennifer asked. Especially when you're traveling for work. That's what video calls are for. As we sat down to eat, I looked around the table at my brother and sister and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The warm certainty of being part of a real family. Not a perfect family. We still had our moments of disagreement and misunderstanding. But a family that showed up for each other, celebrated each other's successes, and provided support during difficult times. It had taken Dad's death to bring us together, but somehow I thought he would be pleased with the result. He'd always believed that family was the most important thing, more valuable than money or success or professional achievement. Turns out he was right about that too. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Marcus handed me an envelope. What's this? For my share of Dad's medical expenses. Marcus, I told you. I know what you told me. But Jennifer and I talked about it and we want to contribute. Not because we have to, but because we want to be part of taking care of Dad, even if it's after the fact. I opened the envelope and saw a check for $35,000. This is too much. It's exactly 1/3 of the total expenses. Jennifer has a check for the same amount. You guys, I really don't need. It's not about what you need, Jennifer interrupted. It's about what we need. We need to feel like we did our part, like we contributed to Dad's care in some meaningful way. I looked at both of them, understanding finally dawning. This wasn't about the money. This was about their need to feel like they'd honored their father, even if they couldn't change the past. Okay, I said, accepting the check. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus replied. For everything. For taking care of Dad, for giving us a second chance, for teaching us what it really means to be a family. We all taught each other, I said. That's what family does. And for the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt like we finally understood what he'd been trying to teach us all along. That love isn't just about the good times and the celebrations. It's about showing up when things get difficult, contributing what you can, and never giving up on the people who matter most. Even when they don't sit with you in the family section. Even when they think you've never contributed anything. Even when it takes a funeral to remind everyone what family really means.